So what is going on, everybody? Fernando Silva here with another video, and in this video it's a little bit of a different one. We were blessed to actually have Stephen Robles on the channel. He is the host of the AppleInsider Podcast. He also runs the YouTube channel The Bearded Teacher, which focuses on a bunch of HomeKit stuff and things like that, and overall he's been a great friend during this whole process. But what prompted this video was a tweet that he sent out about his iOS and iPadOS 16 wish list. And I thought some of the features were very realistic and some of them were a little bit of a reach, but I wanted to bring him onto the channel to talk about what his expectations were for iOS 16, iPadOS 16, and then we ended up talking about the spring event, the Mac Studio, and a bunch of other stuff. So without further ado, grab some popcorn and enjoy this interview, everybody, or this conversation, really. But let's get it. So Stephen Robles, welcome to, I guess we call this a little interview, a little conversation. So what prompted this call or this video chat was I saw that you tweeted something about your iOS and iPadOS wish list. And obviously from somebody who loves the iPad and is probably overly optimistic every single year about what iPad's going to give us or iPadOS is going to give us, I thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity to understand, A, why you chose some of these, because some of these are pretty niche, right? I haven't even thought of some of these features, and also what you think will actually happen, right? But we're going to also talk about the spring event that happened, see if you picked up anything new, see how much your Apple Card was charged, you know? and then we'll kind of go from there, man. But if you want to introduce yourself, Stephen, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Stephen Robles. I talk about technology. I talk a lot about podcasting. You know, I do my YouTube channel, Bearded Teacher. You know, I tried to look up so many different branding and names, and it's like, we'll just go with that. We'll see how it goes. So I come on YouTube, but I also
the
host
beard
the
is perfect.
Thank you. I try to. Without a beard, I look like I'm 2 years old. So I'll pretty much always have a beard. So I felt safe with that branding. But
no, 100%.
And then, yeah. And then I host the AppleInsider Podcast and HomeKit Insider and talk all about Apple stuff. So yeah, that's what I have to do. And I love the iPad. I edit all my podcasts on the iPad. And so that's why I have these kinds of wish lists where I want to see Apple really push the iPad to that pro level. I mean, they literally, call this the iPad Pro. And I got the 12.9 inch M1, like super powerful, everything. And it's not the hardware, that is preventing some of these use cases. It's really just software, which is all in Apple's court. And so that's kind of what prompted just a little wish list to say, here's the things I hope to see at WWDC.
No, of course. And then I've been like a huge advocate of kind of the same thing. Like these things are so overpowered. It's unbelievable. Because again, the software really holds you back. But at the same time, it's like, give me that one feature that would change the game, which is some sort of, the extended monitor support, something to make me be able to use the iPad in a more professional manner.
And even more so, I got the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M1 as my portable machine. And so now I'm in this situation where I also just got something from the event. I got a new desktop computer we could talk about later. And so now I feel like I have one too many devices, but I'm not sure which one is the one too many, because I have the iPad mini, which I love. That's what I edit all my podcasts on. I love the mini. Then I have the 12.9 inch iPad Pro, 14-inch MacBook Pro, and then my Mac Studio. And the ones they're so much crossed over in that Venn diagram is the 12.9 inch iPad Pro and the 14-inch MacBook Pro. I love both of those devices, but I really don't need both. But I do need both because there's no Final Cut on iPad, and I can't record podcasts on my iPad. And so it's just some of those things where I would love to offload one of those devices and simplify kind of like my device roster. But because there's just a few things missing from iPad, I just can't just yet.
No, and then what made it even more difficult in that situation, I think, as cool as Universal Control is, I think that made it even harder to understand what you need, whether it's Mac OS, how much more can the iPad Pro supplement it without it becoming a laptop. You know what I mean? First we had Sidecar, which is beautiful, right? A very good use case, very easy. Now Universal Control to this day is still mind-blowing. But again, it's like how do you use it in your workflow? I've tried so many different ways of setting it up, using my iPad as a control base, using the Mac as a control base, and having the iPad kind of stand up. But it's kind of, you're right. It's like for right now, I need the Mac OS to do that final 5% of tasks that I just can't do on the iPad, unfortunately,
Right. And I do not want Mac OS on iPad. That's something
No.
everyone always brings up. That's really not what I want. And so real quick, I'll run down the wish list and kind of point out
Yeah, let's hear it.
the needs versus wants. Everyone I feel like has asked for iMessage mark as unread. I can't tell you how many times I have an iMessage lost to the void, and they'll message me a week later, be like, "Bro, what's up?" And I'm like, you feel terrible. So I really need that. Yeah, got to mark that as unread. I also would love bold and italic in iMessage, and this sounds kind of niche, but every once in a while, like I do love just writing. I love the written word as a medium. And there's sometimes where I want to emphasize a word so the person on the other side of a text gets my inflection. And so
Absolutely.
I'll put asterisks around a word, so they kind of emphasize that as they read it. And it's just like, it would be cool if you could just do maybe just one, maybe just italics in iMessage. I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be fun. And bulleted lists, I feel like there's so many times I text somebody a list of things and it's like, just to do rich bullets. But clipboard management, which is a big thing I love on Mac. I would love that on iPad. The multi-app audio is the big one for podcasting. If you have your iPad Pro, you got Skype on the left, and you have Ferrite on the right, you can't use a USB microphone in both of those apps at the same time. A little warning comes up, even on the latest ones, and it says, this device is already in use. And so you cannot do a Skype or FaceTime call with the same USB microphone and record that microphone in Ferrite. Now, there are apps from Riverside actually has a new app for it where you can do a call and record through the one app. And because it's just one app, you can use that USB device. But I don't do that. I Skype people or FaceTime people for a guest on a podcast, and I want to record in an app that I trust to do the recording, like Ferrite. And you just cannot have two apps at the same time on iPadOS access the same USB audio device. And I feel like no visual complexity is added when you add that feature. It's something totally invisible to the user, but would totally open up the possibilities for recording podcasts on the iPad.
And that's got to be just a flip of a switch, right? There's no way that Apple doesn't have that built into there. It's got to be just a software
You would think,
component.
and it would be an API where third-party app developers would then, be able to allow that. But I know Canis, the developer of Ferrite and many other apps, I'm sure they would update it immediately. So that's what I hope for that.
Okay.
Interactive widgets, that's kind of an iOS want where you can actually add a task without opening the Things app. I would love interactive widgets. The Mail app, I just feel like that thing is long in the tooth, man. That thing needs some updates.
Yep.
The Contacts app is another one. I didn't mention that. The Contacts app is like someone just did a table view in Xcode, and that's the Contacts
It's been the
app.
same
That's
since
the whole deal.
2007. Let's be honest.
Yeah, like they removed the leather stitching, and then that was it. They just changed that. So that's a big deal. The standalone password app is something I would love across all of Apple's devices. Apple's added two-factor codes in their iCloud keychain, which is great. They've added notes, there's a little notes field now for different logins. And I just say, just make it a standalone app so it can be a replacement for 1Password or other options, just to give people that ability. And then the last one that's a big for me, especially with kids, is multi-user app support on iPad. Because I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I want to get her own iPad just yet. She's a little too young for that, and so she uses my wife's iPad sometimes. Sometimes she'll use my iPad Mini just to watch something or play a game, and it would just be so nice if I could tap a button and put it into a kid's profile with their own iCloud account, with their own game saved progress, with their own notes, their own music, access to screen time controls specifically for that user. And it would allow, parents to be able to use a device like the iPad for multiple kids. School stuff already has this. If you use an iPad for education, Apple has tools for the classroom where an iPad can be used by multiple users and they have their own profiles, but it's just not on the consumer side. And so that was my last one on the wish list.
No, I mean, that's a big one too. And I mean, that's a great use case or a great example for your 5-year-old daughter. She's still a little too young for the iPad to get her a dedicated one. But then also, these things are getting kind of expensive. We used to live in a time where there was one computer at the house and everybody would have their Windows XP, little circle icon to log into their, to their part of the computer. So having one iPad for your case where there's, how many kids do you have? 2, 3? 3, right?
I have 3 kids, and my 2 oldest ones already have their own iPad because they do a lot of schoolwork on it.
Okay.
And then my wife has an iPad, and then I have 2. So we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We already have 5 iPads in the
Yeah.
house. It's like, just let me switch the user on one of them so then my daughter can have that as hers when she uses one.
No, that makes sense. No, yeah, I remember, and I did see that
Yeah.
there is multi-user support, like you said, on the education side. I remember I made like an iPadOS update video about that. And then of course, me thinking like, oh, in a future update, it'll come out on the consumer-facing side. Like it just makes sense to come out on the consumer-facing side, but no, Apple has not done that. But I mean, I definitely want to touch on some of these on a list because you brought up a good one, like the Mail app. I have not used the Apple Mail app since 2014 for that case. Like I went to, from Mail, I went to like Spark Mail, which was great. Spark Mail was awesome that I used for a while. I used regular Gmail, Outlook, even Outlook is great. And then now I'm on Spike Mail. I've been using that for about 18 months. And I kind of like that one because it makes it a little more conversational. It's like almost like you're iMessaging or WhatsApping somebody. But I couldn't even tell Apple what to do to the Mail app to make it more user. Like, what would you want out of that Mail app to be like, okay, now let me try it again?
You know, I've been using, so I use the Mail app mainly, but then I also use Gmail and Outlook because I have accounts for work in those that if I want to snooze an email, you can use something like Spark, and Spark has its own snoozing mechanism where Spark will handle hiding that message and then resurfacing it. But I just have trust issues with third-party apps like hiding my email in places that I can't see it. And so if I want to snooze an email, I'll go to the Gmail app or the Outlook app specifically just to do that. And so I would trust Apple to do a snooze feature that's built into the operating system. So if they added Apple snoozing, which if third-party apps can do it, Apple can do it for Gmail and Outlook and, you know, whatever email app you do it. So snooze is a big deal. You know, I feel like attachments, so many times I have just normal iPhone users who've used iPhone for years don't know how to attach something well. And if you think about it, it's kind of obscure. Like if you tap in the email, you get the little copy paste and select bar. And sometimes you have to hit the arrow over just to get attach file or attach photo. And then even then, you know, it acts different when you attach a photo or a file. The photo might be embedded, or if you do it from the Files app as an attached file, it might be more of an attachment. And then the recipient of that email, as you know, if you're in Outlook, sometimes it's embedded, sometimes it's an attachment, like just weird stuff like that. And so I think if Apple could make the attachment process more visible to the user to attach it easily, and then also be a little more consistent on how those files appear to the recipient side, I think it would be better. Like Gmail does a good job. Like when I send an email through Gmail and I attach a file, I rarely have people say, I can't save this to my computer. You know, I don't know what to do with this. Whereas if I do it in the Mail app, they'll be like, I see it. I see the picture in the email, but I can't save it. And there probably is a way to do it. They're just not sure how to do it. But I think Apple could do a little better at that.
No, I agree 100%. And it kind of goes into, because I know that there's a Mail app and then also just like iCloud in general. I think Apple could do a much better job of like teaching the users how to use it. Because I'm somebody who, especially on the iCloud side, it's a little confusing, man. You know, if you don't spend time to really learn how to use it, you're going to end up spending a lot of money just being, okay, take more money so I can get more space in my iCloud. Like iCloud management is a tough one, man.
I literally had someone who just upgraded to the iPhone 13 Pro. They got like a big version, like a 512 gigabyte, because they were tired of hearing or seeing messages about space. And so they got this brand new phone, and then they came to me and it says, why is this thing telling me it's out of storage? I just got it. But the message they were receiving is that their iCloud was out of storage. And people just don't know the difference still. They don't know where to look at their iCloud storage amount and how much they have full, or the iPhone. And they don't really understand the difference. They don't know why is something in iCloud and how would that help my phone storage and how to optimize on a Mac. You know, desktop and documents folders, you can have those synced to iCloud to free up space on your Mac. But then people are like, how do I do that? Like, where do I go to tell it, give me more space? And then people don't know where their files go, even if they do. So educating the user and making it a little more visually obvious, what is it that is happening? Is it the iCloud storage that's full? Is it the phone storage? And specific bullets to say, hey, do this if you don't want to buy more storage, which is not something Apple would probably say, like, don't do this to not spend money. But instructions that 100%. Are that clear would help.
No, yeah. And I know that like I'm in a situation where like I have a iCloud desktop set up inside of my Files app, but then I also have a regular desktop inside of my Files app. And sometimes I don't know where it should go. You know, like sometimes it auto saves into the iCloud. So I mean that's good sometimes because I need it on my iPad, but other times it'll just autosave into the cloud when I don't need it in the cloud. So I'm at that point where it's like, do I upgrade or do I really get hone in, learn what's going on, and really clean up my iCloud a little bit?
Yeah,
which I probably should do that.
And now that I'm doing more video content on YouTube, a lot of times I have the decision, where do I save the render file? Because I'm about to upload it to YouTube, and I also may want to access this on all my devices. And so there's this interim, like maybe I'll save it in a folder in my iCloud drive, but I can't keep it there long term because then my iCloud drive is going to be full. And so I have to do the process of, I need to move this to maybe the movies folder on my Mac that doesn't sync to iCloud. And then I could just keep them there on my Mac locally. And so, yeah, it's this weird choosing. Like, I like the integration. It's great that you have iCloud folders and they feel just like native folders on the Mac. But I would also like better tools for like upload this file to iCloud now, like prioritize this file.
Yeah.
You can do that to download. You can right click a file and say download right now, but I would like that option on the upload side too. Like prioritize this. I need this file to get to my iCloud drive now. Like prioritize this one.
That makes sense. How big, on average, how big are those video files? Like when you're rendering and about to upload?
Well, let's see. I actually just rendered one out before we recorded, and let me see. Where did it go? I'll have to look.
Probably lost in freaking iCloud somewhere.
Well, because I have a new Mac. I don't know if I told you, and so I don't know like where they went. One is like a gigabyte to like 3 gigabytes to 7 gigabytes. So they're all in like the single-digit gigabyte file. But also, like for HomeKit Insider, we do that podcast via video, and we record it. Like I'm doing now, and then I'll put that file in a shared iCloud drive folder so Andrew can get it. But every couple of weeks, I have to remember to delete all those video files of the podcast recording because he's not going to use them anymore. It's already on YouTube, and they take up a ton of iCloud drive space. Like I have 1.5 terabytes full of my 2 terabyte iCloud drive space right now, so got to clean it up.
I was going to ask you, are you on the Apple One package right now?
I do the Apple One. I also have like 6 members, my kids, wife, one of my parents is on it. So, we all share that 2 terabytes. But you can actually upgrade to 4 terabytes if you wanted to. If you do the Apple One Premium, you can actually add 2 more terabytes of storage. So I've not done it yet. I'm trying to manage the space so I don't have to. But it is an option. I could double it if I need to.
How much more would it be?
I think it's like $10 more or $15 more a month, and you get 4 terabytes total, as opposed to 2 terabytes
instead of the 2.
Yeah, so which is great. I mean, it's a great deal.
Yeah,
because Dropbox you pay $20 for 2 terabytes of storage, and that's just Dropbox, and Apple One you get everything else. So anyway, we'll see.
That's true. Nice, dude, nice. But okay, so we went through the iOS wish list. Is there anything? I guess those also relate to iPad a little bit, but is there anything on the iPad side that would, I guess, make you pick that 12.9 iPad over your 14-inch MacBook?
Yeah, the couple, Final Cut is the big one because I'm going to be editing on most of my video on this Mac Studio now, and it's awesome. But every once in a while, I just like to leave the desk and sit on the sofa, and I want the option to edit a video, a light video. Maybe it's a short, like a YouTube short or something. And I already have a 1 terabyte SSD that I bring with me for all the video footage anyway. I would love to just be able to sit on the sofa with my iPad and do it and not need a whole MacBook Pro for that. The M1 would be plenty capable. It'd be plenty fast. So Final Cut on there would be great. And then also, there's just some weird quirks still when it comes to website forms and like Squarespace. I do a lot of Squarespace websites, and it still acts funny in Safari on the iPad. And they, Apple says this is desktop Safari on iPad. It's like, well, not yet. Like it doesn't really function perfectly just yet. So I would still like that. And other things like numbers. I use numbers a lot for spreadsheets, and I know how to use it on my Mac to great effect of doing formulas in fields and formatting the cells. And it's just still very different on the iPad. And so I don't know where everything is instinctively. And like just doing a formula seems much more cumbersome. And so I would love for the like iWork suite on iPad to look a little bit more like Mac, so I can do that stuff on iPad with a Magic Keyboard. Screen real estate is great. Magic Keyboard is great. Just needs some of that stuff to be more streamlined and feel like I know where everything is.
but still no Mac OS on there. Because it sounds like you kind of want Mac OS on
No, no.
there.
I don't like because Numbers is on there. Like Numbers is great, but
Yeah.
like just a thing of in Numbers on Mac OS, if I hit the equal sign, I can type out a formula and pretty quickly get it working in that number spreadsheet
Mm,
and not have to worry about different formatting. And if I do those same keystrokes on the iPad, it just doesn't do the same thing. And I don't
mm,
know, like whether it's selecting the cells, doing like B5 colon B12,
yeah.
like all that kind of stuff. It just if the same keystrokes would work on iPad, that would be great. Which again, don't change the visuals aspect of it at all. Just make it function like it does on Mac, so I don't have to remember like a different process
Mm.
between Mac and iPad.
No, that makes sense. If anything, I've noticed that because I use Numbers. Honestly, I use Numbers and Excel a lot interchangeably, and
Yeah.
Excel on the iPad acts more like Numbers on Mac OS. If that makes any sense,
It does.
right?
I know exactly what you mean.
Like
I have an allergic reaction to Excel and Microsoft Word, so I can't use it. So
I don't know, man.
that's
Like
that's what
Microsoft
holds
is
me
the one
back.
company who's put a lot of work into the iPad suite of
Yeah,
products. It's wild. I'm very, very, every time I use it, unless you're like a
yeah,
crazy Excel user, which is what I tell people, like, if you're doing pivot tables and huge database files, then all right, stick to it on Mac OS. But for the most part, it'll get you 95% of the way there. And with Word and PowerPoint, it's 100% of the way there, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I totally agree. I remember I think you posted a picture of like your iPad used apps or whatever, and I saw all these Microsoft apps. You had like Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint,
Uh,
SharePoint. I was like, oh my goodness, this is making me nauseous. But I will say, even Google Sheets, even the Google Sheets on app on iPad and iPhone functions more like Numbers on Mac than Numbers on
mm,
iPad. And I'll actually use Google Sheets personally when I have to share spreadsheets with my wife. When we do budgeting,
okay.
we'll share a Google Sheet for the biweekly budget. So when I get paid, I just create a new spreadsheet, have a template and all that.
Mm,
And I just find the collaboration and sync like conflict resolution, the sync conflict resolution is better in Google Sheets. And again, the formulas just seem to work more seamlessly. And so I'll even use Google Sheets before Numbers on my iPhone, for instance.
interesting. Okay. Nice, man. All right. So
Yeah.
now we got to move on a little bit. I want to talk about the spring event. I want to hear
Yeah, man.
what you got. I want to hear what you're using right now. I mean, you mentioned you're using the Mac Studio. I want to know the config of that one,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Let's go. Dang,
There it is.
that thing is chunky, as they say.
Yeah, man, it's big. So yeah, the event came, and I've been waiting for a Mac desktop for a while, and this thing was pretty much just what I was looking for. I would have been on the fence if they had done a large iMac with an M1
Uh,
Max and all
yeah.
that. I would have may have gone that direction, but it really looks like they're not doing that for a while, maybe not the
Yeah.
rest of this year. And so the Mac Studio was the one for me. I went with the M1 Max model, not the Ultra,
Hmm.
because I'm not doing 3D animation. I'm not
Yeah.
doing like machine algorithm, all that stuff. So I got the M1 Max and, did the 64 gigs of RAM, did the 2 terabyte SSD, and this
Nice.
is going to be my desktop for a while to come. Be
Well,
my
let's hope so.
podcast. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
this rate, everybody keeps saying that, but Apple next year is going to come out with something else that everybody's going to want.
Like for real. Like that is the scary part. Like the Apple Silicon is innovating so fast. It's like,
Hmm.
let me just be satisfied. But honestly, this thing is so fast. The port situation is perfect. The SD card slot on the back, 4 Thunderbolts on the back,
Hmm.
or SD card slot on the front. And I've been editing in Final Cut this week with it. Buttery smooth. Love that. All my podcast production stuff is going to be great with this. And even live, I've experimented with doing some YouTube lives with multi-camera shots,
Oh,
and I know this
nice.
thing's going to handle it. My M1 Pro handled it. My
Yeah.
MacBook Pro with M1 Pro handled it fine. So I know this M1 Max is going to be great. And so this headroom, it should be enough for a long time to come. And then other than that, I didn't really get anything else from the event, but I did go by the Apple Store and got myself a Touch ID
Oh,
Magic Keyboard.
I need one of those.
And
Okay.
yeah, because I have not had any Touch ID Magic Keyboards like this. And after using it for a few days, the Apple Watch Unlock is cool, but it is not
Mm,
as reliable as having a Touch ID on your Mac. So I did that, and I went with the small one because I don't like the number pad a size. Like it's a really long keyboard. I don't use the number pad very often. I actually have, I joked about this on one of the recent Apple Insider podcasts. I actually have a black one.
With a big number pad. Okay.
You couldn't get this before separately. This only came with the iMac Pro and the Mac Pro, and I acquired this from my work. I'll probably give it back.
Oh, I think I
one
remember
day.
you talking about that on the podcast. I did hear it.
Yes.
Was that with Daily Tech? It might have been, right? Or no?
Yeah, or maybe it might have been the Apple Insider show with William, because he called me out on the acquired part.
The acquired, okay.
But yeah, like it looks cool. I like the look, but the number pad is just too much. Like it's too many buttons. I don't need that much. So anyway, so those are the two things I got.
100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's what I got from the event. But man, I saw that you got something also from the event. Something I did not get. What you got?
Picked up a baseline blue iPad Air. Had to see what this M1 was all about.
That's awesome.
It's clean. Got a little black Apple pencil there too. Has a little aesthetic, which is nice.
How'd you do that? Is that a D-brand thing? What is that?
Nah, don't worry. It's one of those like alternatives. It's a cheaper one that we're kind of playing around.
Oh, okay.
We're working on a budget accessory video for the iPad Air.
Oh, very cool.
So we're doing one of those.
That blue is nice.
This blue is so much nicer than last year. Last year it barely looked blue.
Yeah.
So
right.
So we're playing with it.
Nice.
So that's the thing. It's like now with this iPad out, you don't know whether or not to recommend the iPad Pro, especially if somebody wants an 11-inch iPad Pro. I don't know why you would want that, right? There's at this point, unless ProMotion, Thunderbolt, right? Maybe
Thunderbolt. I mean, nah. No one should buy it for Thunderbolt. I don't think anybody's doing any big Thunderbolt stuff. ProMotion, I enjoy it, but if you don't see it, I really don't know why you would get the 11-inch Pro over the Air. Face ID is another big one. I do really like Face ID, but for most people, the iPad Air is the one to get. I wish it started at $500 instead of $600. I feel like at $600, it's creeping up more into that Pro territory than prosumer and consumer.
Yeah.
And if you want that design with the no bezel, no head and chin, it's like $600 to start with that. Otherwise you're with the $329 older model iPad, kind of older body style. So anyway, I think I'm excited to see the next iPad Pro revision, because they're going to have to do something to really differentiate the 11-inch Pro with the Air. And whatever feature set, maybe it's a hardware change, a hardware redesign, or more power features. I'm not even sure what they would add, but I think they're going to have to do something to differentiate it from the Air. And so I'm excited to see that. And I would encourage people to wait for that revision than buy a Pro right now.
Do you think they'll discontinue the 11 Pro at any point?
I don't know. I think it depends what feature set they could put in there. If they could put the mini LED XDR display in the 11-inch, I think that would make it a little more compelling. If they had it start at 256 gigabytes instead of a 128, that would make it, again, a little more compelling as a starter Pro. And maybe if they have like Final Cut, but only for iPad Pro, that would, again, make it more compelling to be an iPad Pro. But now that it'll, again, have to be something different than the M1, because if you put Final Cut on iPad Pro and not the Air, it's like it's running the same chip. There would be no reason to exclude it from the Air. So I'm very curious to see what Apple adds in the next Pro model.
No, because I've been telling people that for better or for worse in the iPad lineup, no matter how much you spend, Apple doesn't discriminate from a feature standpoint. At least from a software feature standpoint. So I mean, if you buy the $330 iPad or a fully loaded M1 iPad Pro, it's gonna be the same experience for the most part, right? So I think Apple's going to have to separate it from a software feature standpoint. I think that's the only way. They're going to have to throw maybe an M1 Pro in there and then give us something that the M1 iPad Air literally cannot do. Because right now, aside from like mini LED and ProMotion, there isn't much,
But on the other hand, you look at the Mac line, there is zero software differentiation. You can buy an M1 Mac Mini or an M1 MacBook Air and run the exact same software with the exact same feature set as an M1 Ultra Mac Studio. And, I think that is something that Apple prides itself on. They want as many customers to have access to their creative apps as possible, whether that's Final Cut or Logic or GarageBand. So I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they would do that. I can't think of another situation where Apple made an app or software feature available to the iPads differently, like base model could get GarageBand by iPad Pro. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Things like LiDAR and augmented reality, those could be hardware features that play into the software that maybe the new iPad will have some kind of incredible AR, thing.
Yeah.
And that's only available on iPad Pro, like the LiDAR is now. You only get LiDAR on the iPad Pro. So maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, because I was thinking about that the other day, and I couldn't think of an instance where it was like, all right, we're going to give these people that spent way more money this cool feature versus not. Apple has really never done that. And I mean, normally it's a good thing. Like I always tell people, like, hey, if you're getting into the ecosystem and you don't want to spend that much money, go as cheap as possible, right? It's going to be relatively the same experience no matter how much money you spend. Especially now with the M1 parity, it's unbelievable. Back then, if you bought the M1 or if you bought like an Intel MacBook Air, the cheapest one, yeah, it's going to run a little slower than a MacBook Pro, But now it's like the M1 Air, it's hard not to recommend to people. It's really hard not to recommend to people.
For sure. One other wrinkle I'll add, it's been a while since Apple updated the Apple Pencil. We only have Gen 1 and Gen 2. Generation 2 came out with the 2018 iPad Pro. So that's 4 years old now. If they update the iPad Pro lineup and also release a new version of the Apple Pencil, they could, I hope they don't, they could make the third gen Apple Pencil only compatible with the iPad Pro for whatever reason. Maybe it's some technology in the screen that can read both sides of the Apple Pencil, so you can like turn it over and erase instead of just, being able to use the pen, the tip side. So maybe they do like new Apple Pencil only with iPad Pro, but I mean, it already connects right now just with magnets. It charges right on the top of the iPad. It would seem strange to make an Apple... my thing was jacked up. Well, it was not on there properly. There we go.
There it is.
Like, what in the world? But I don't know why they... Maybe it will still connect that way, but those certain Apple Pencil features, like using the back as an eraser, is only available on iPad Pro. Maybe that's something that comes out with the next generation.
But then that'll give Apple permission to then give us a new Magic Keyboard that only works with the new iPad Pro, and then that whole cycle starts all over again, where maybe the Air works with that keyboard eventually. I don't know. Apple's just going to probably go through that same cycle because it is time to upgrade the Pro. They already caught up the rest of the lineup to the iPad Pro. But yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm excited for it overall. I'm overall optimistic. I'm just if Apple lets me down, I won't be surprised.
I think WWDC, sometimes we get a glimpse of the coming hardware with the feature set, sometimes. And so depending on what they announce with iPadOS, going back to our wish list and all, maybe that will kind of hint at the hardware we'll see later. Final Cut on iPad, new iPad Pro with a new Apple Pencil that is really made for Final Cut on iPad. I mean, that would be amazing. I know Apple Pencil and editing podcasts for me changed the game. Editing a podcast with Apple Pencil is totally a better, faster, I just love the experience more than editing a podcast on the Mac. Maybe they could do the same with Final Cut and editing video. That editing video with the Apple Pencil on the iPad is just a totally new and different experience that makes it better and faster in different ways. And that's now why you would buy an iPad Pro, because you want to edit video on that device. So maybe I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'm sure you've played with LumaFusion. Does it not get you to that point? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, not, I do a lot of multicam clips, and I think LumaFusion may do it. But for me, just the learning curve to do it and kind of, working with external SSDs and all, it's still not seamless. Final Cut, when I plug in an external SSD, I can hold the Option key when I open Final Cut on my Mac. I can choose the library that I want to open on what drive, and just all those little things of the process. I would want to see that seamless process on the iPad before I make a switch to any application. And LumaFusion could do those things, but it just, I tried it. I tried it for a while, and it wasn't for me. I'm sure it has many, it's feature packed. I'm sure it can do many of the things, but I just didn't prefer it at the moment. I was sticking with Final Cut.
Not for sure. And at the same time, if you know Final Cut, why switch? At that point, why go through the learning curve when you've already kind of perfected your system over there? For me, it was just like...
And I got this Mac Studio.
Yeah, for a reason.
This Mac Studio's got to do something.
You're not going to freaking run LumaFusion on the Mac Studio, even though you probably can. Because I downloaded LumaFusion on the MacBook Air, and I tried to edit a video. It's a little bit wonky, because it's a touch-first interface. But
correct. Which, yeah.
But I do want to ask you, did you pick up the Studio display? Did you pick one of those up?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. I have an LG Ultrafine 4K, not the 5K. I've had it for a couple of years, and I really like it. Like, it looks great. It does, it's not like the Studio display has ProMotion and this doesn't. Feature-wise, it's pretty similar. It's fine for my need. It's height adjustable and tilts already. My LG Ultrafine, so I don't have to spend the $2,000 on that. But I will say, I went to the Apple store the other day and saw the Studio display in person. It is a beautiful display, and like the hardware design is awesome. And what almost sold me is I went to just tilt the Studio display just a little bit, and it felt so like firm and sturdy, and tilting it was like real smooth, and it tilted right where I put it and stayed right in place. And I was like, man, the external hardware design of that thing is beautiful, and I love it. I would love the speakers on it, but not yet. The year,
not quite.
I might get it sometime this year, maybe. But I would also love an upgrade in my display features if I'm going to upgrade my display. Like, I would love ProMotion. I would love XDR level display because I love the XDR on my iPad Pro, on my MacBook Pro. I would love it on a monitor. So I held off. I resisted just yet. So we'll see.
Interesting. Because I'm one of those skeptics that was, or on an optimistic way, right? Where putting the A13 in there was an interesting move, I thought, right? Apple says it's to power, center stage, to power the speakers and things like that. But I think there's got to be something a little bit more. I mean, that thing powered the latest and greatest iPhone 2 years ago, right? Like, I wonder, what do you think is the purpose of that right now?
Even more so, I think there was news actually just this morning that there's actually 64 gigabytes of SSD storage on the Studio display. And so you basically have a base model iPad in that display. A base model iPad has 64 gigs of storage and an A13, or I think it has A14 now. But you basically have a 9th gen iPad in that display, and it's like, I don't know why you would put 64 gigabytes of storage in a display. I don't know what you're going to do with it. It's not big enough to use as like storage if you're doing video stuff, but it does seem very strange. I don't know. I don't think they're going to run any kind of like software on it, but it was curious. They spent time during the event to talk about that A13 and how it's powering this when it's really just doing center stage. And then all the stuff about the webcam already came out. It was like, man, it needs a software update.
I saw that, The Verge tore it apart.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. Yeah, Neeli was like, this thing's garbage.
Which, I mean, it did look like on a $1,600 display. Get out of here. Give me something a little bit better.
Yeah. And the height adjustable stand being $400 more is like, that's a lot of money. And I would want to, as I'm getting older, I'm not super old, but I'm getting older. I do try to be conscious of ergonomics. And like, I have my LG Ultrafine, like very high up because I try to keep that at eye level with the keyboard and mouse where my arms are at like a 90-degree angle. I'm trying to be ergonomically correct.
Did you watch the Wall Street Journal video from a couple years ago? Is that the video?
Exactly. So actually, it's funny. I saw iJustine's video on the Mac Studio, and she was like doing this. She's like slouching, and then she has her hands like almost at her head level doing this. And I was like, iJustine, what are you doing? Like, I don't know if you work like that all the time, but can't be good for ergonomics.
That's funny, man. I don't know. No, I've definitely grown to take advantage of ergonomics, even down to like a wrist pad. I was one of those people that who would spend even like $5 on something so dumb. Wait until you actually use it, and then you'll appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah, bro. I got one too.
So what are your thoughts on mean, I'm hoping Apple doesn't do this, but the fact that the A13 being in there, and then that little Easter egg of the iPad Pro being under the compatibility list on that studio display, is that a foreshadow to something? What are your thoughts?
Of like the iPad being able to use it as a legit external display kind of thing?
As a legit external display. I mean, again, no, I think they're going to give us, I mean, it'd be great to get some sort of, floating window external display like built for the iPad. That's what I'm thinking might happen. But I mean, I'm curious to know what you think.
It was very curious. I think it was Majin Buu on Twitter. He's a leaker, and he tweeted that Apple's working on this mode for iPad where when it's docked in like the Magic Keyboard or connected to some kind of display, that you'll then be able to have windowed apps as opposed to just side by side and slide over. And I feel like that is a plausible feature addition at this year's WWDC. They have the Studio Display. They could say, you love Studio Display with your Mac Studio and your MacBook Pro, and now it can even supercharge your iPad. And if you connect it to an iPad Air or iPad Pro, that you can actually have apps in Windows, up to 4 maybe, up to whatever.
You should be up there announcing
as a feature set.
That sounded good, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then I could see it. I could see it happening. I could see Craig Federighi, Silver Fox doing that. And I think it would make sense. What would be the thing for me is, okay, I can window 4 apps on this beautiful display. Can I use my USB audio device in those windowed apps, because you're adding this visual complexity that everybody talks about shouldn't belong on iPad, but I would welcome it. Let's welcome this visual complexity, be able to window apps on it. But if there's no additional functionality to the user to actually multitask in those apps, or to, again, like USB devices, whatever, let 2 apps use an SSD at the same time, Files and LumaFusion, something like that, then it would feel like, okay, I mean, I guess it's a cool gimmick, but it's not giving more power in the hands of the user. So I hope it happens, and I hope it comes alongside other features that will give the iPad some of those superpowers.
Yeah, and then I think my mentality was on Apple's side, if they do bring this maybe in a 16.0 beta, like how many people are going to have a 12.9 inch iPad Pro with the Studio Display, right? That sample size is going to be relatively small, I think. So they can, quality control can be, and quality assurance can be a big thing for them, because I don't know how many people are going to run out and get a 1600 display as an accessory just to an iPad, right? There's not going to be a lot of people.
For sure.
And I'm curious to know if maybe Apple's going to restrict it to just that Studio Display, or if it's, again, like you said, a new iPad mode that can be used across whatever.
That is true. They did mention when they announced the M1 iPad Pro last year, they talked about the Thunderbolt port, and they mentioned what you can do with it. And there was a slide where they showed somebody working on an iPad with an external display in the background, showing like a full screen thing. Yeah, it was LumaFusion. And so Apple has already, highlighted a feature in the keynote about an external display and the iPad. So because they've already done it, I feel like it's plausible, but it seemed like a niche market. You got Federico Vitici, you got you, and Christopher Lawley, and a couple other guys. You guys will be the ones that do it. But if they make it compelling, maybe it would be. You don't have to get a Studio Display to use it. Maybe you can just HDMI adapter it, USB-C dock kind of thing. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. That's what I'm excited for. But again, we're going to keep our expectations level. When you go watch a movie with low expectations, it usually ends up being a great movie, right? So that's the idea.
The opposite happened with The Batman, I will just say.
Really?
Well, it was just so hyped, and I enjoyed it. Cinematography was beautiful. I actually retroactively liked it more once I saw Patrick Tomaso's video on the cinematography of The Batman. Made me appreciate it even more. But I almost feel like I would have loved to not seen anything about the Batman and just saw the movie, like no trailer, no nothing. And I probably would have been blown away because it was very compelling in moments. But yes, for WWDC and Apple events, always keep expectations low and be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's how I just watched Free Guy on Disney Plus. Had no expectations. I just say it's a Ryan Reynolds movie. I like Ryan Reynolds. Threw it on. I thought it was great. But if somebody had told me it was amazing, I don't know if I would have felt the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just go into it, say, I'll enjoy whatever they give me, hopefully USB audio device support on the iPad. That's all.
No, that
That's
makes
my
sense.
expectation.
So, I mean, I guess that kind of answers the question. I was going to ask you one more question to kind of wrap everything up. I guess aside from the multi-app audio devices, what is one thing that you would want out of iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 if you had to pick one for Apple to give you? I guess one for each iOS and then one for iPadOS.
Oh, well, for iOS, make that mail app really good. I have to interact with it all the time. And so for my iPhone, I would love to delete the Gmail and the Outlook apps off my phone and just use that. So on iPhone specifically, I would love to see that mail app really get updated. On the iPad, I'm going to say Final Cut, because if I get that audio device support where I can use, multiple apps can use one USB device, and Final Cut is on the iPad, I would feel comfortable selling my 14-inch MacBook Pro and just using my Mac Studio at my desk, my iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard everywhere else, and I feel like my workflow would be covered. Mm-hmm. I could travel, just take my iPad Pro and record a podcast when I'm traveling. I don't have to worry about bringing a Mac or a MacBook Pro. And then when I get back to my desk, I got my big Mac Studio for the big editing and all that. So those would be my thing for iPad. I hope for Final Cut and the USB audio stuff.
No, I love that. I mean, that's kind of the situation I'm in right now. Even though it is a MacBook Air, I treat it as a desktop. This MacBook Air has never left this desk, right? And recently I've been keeping it in clamshell mode because I use the Apple Watch to unlock it, and then this Epoch Cam as my webcam. But yeah, that's what I use my iPad 4. I take it with me whenever I need to get work done on the go. I go into the city once a week for work. I just bring my iPad, man. It does all the video chats and stuff like that. I do wish the camera was moved horizontally. But
yes,
outside,
bro, that. Oh
that's
my goodness! Like on
center
iPad,
stage,
on iPad Pro,
put it there.
Bro, I do so many Zoom calls. I actually prefer doing Zoom calls on the iPad because I like the fact that the Zoom app is sandboxed. There was some weird stuff with the Zoom app on Mac. They tried to do some weird kernel stuff. And I have it on my Mac just out of necessity, but I prefer taking Zoom calls on the iPad, except for the fact that I look like I'm looking over here when I'm on a Zoom call to everybody else because the stinking camera is all the way on the left. And so, please move it to the top center. Please, Apple.
Right? They could still fit the magnet to charge the Apple Pencil, right? I think.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, if they could fit all this stuff on the top of the iPad Mini, you got both. Yeah. Hold on, there it is. You got the sleep and all this and all the speakers on the top of the Mini. Yeah. Apple could figure it out.
They'll figure it out. But awesome, man. Yeah. Steven, this was sick. Robles. I'm not going to say Robles. Yeah, Robles. Do you speak Spanish, by the way, or no?
Oh, man, a tiny bit. My parents are fluent. I'm Puerto Rican. Both my parents are Puerto Rican. They're fluent. My grandmother's first language was Spanish, but they didn't talk to me when I was a kid. So I didn't learn Spanish from them. I learned it in school, and I was getting close to fluent. I took it all through high school, but didn't use it after that. And so now it's like, la camiseta rojo. That's all I know. Roja.
Hey, I don't even know the right masculine. So that's good.
Yeah, I can sound Spanish. Yeah.
I'm sure you understand most of it when it comes in.
I don't know about most. I can understand some. I would survive. If you dropped me over in Puerto Rico, I'd survive, but not thrive. It would take me a minute.
That makes sense, for sure. So, awesome, man. But we got to check out Stephen, Apple Insider host, the HomeKit podcast host. We got Bearded Teacher. How would you describe Bearded Teacher overall? Like podcast how-tos? Because there's a little bit more than podcast in there, I think.
I do, man. I know you're supposed to focus on one thing on a YouTube channel and just do that one thing, but I'm like, I love podcasting, and so I do a lot of tips and tutorials on podcast equipment, software, apps, all that. And plus, I'm a huge Apple guy, so I'm going to talk about Apple stuff. I'm talking about my personal smart home because we're almost done building our new home here in Central Florida.
Huge congrats.
And so I literally have... Thank you, man. I have like 40 light switches that I just got from Wemo to Leviton because I'm making it like smart house. This is my smart house.
No, I saw that picture on Twitter. It looked like there was a lot going on in that picture, man.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to be doing videos on smart home stuff. So yeah, all that kind of stuff. Subscribe and then watch what you like and what you're interested in.
Heck yeah. And then follow on Twitter. You always got some gold posts on Twitter.
Thank you, man.
For sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I appreciate you coming on, and then maybe we'll go on the Apple Insider one day when WWC comes around and they give us some good iPad stuff.
We'll figure it. Yes, bro. Yeah. Yes, we will figure that out. And thank you so much for having me, man. I love talking to you. This has been a pleasure. And people, I always point people to your iPad stuff, love your stuff. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
No, I appreciate it. Until next time, man. Bye, everybody.
All right, man. Peace.
So there you have it, everybody. Big shout out to Stephen for coming onto the channel. I thought that was an amazing thing to have. Having his insight and knowing that he's been kind of in this Apple world since 2005, which is a little bit before I was, is kind of crazy to think about. So having his insight and his perspective on everything Apple was absolutely amazing. But hopefully we do get some new iPadOS 16 updates that'll really change the way that we use the iPad moving forward. Because every year it seems like we're changing how we're using the iPad just a little bit more. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, check out one of these videos over here if you guys want to learn about something iPad related. And if you guys made it to the end, leave it a little dolphin. But until next time, peace, everybody. Shout out Steve. And I'm going to leave all of his information down below if you guys want to follow him on Twitter, on YouTube. Follow the Apple Insider Podcast because that thing is awesome. Until next time.